Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show. I'm Scott Jagow along with Ray Paulick. We're so glad to have you with us. Ray, what a week it has been. Wow, the industry is changing right before our very eyes. Yesterday we had the 22nd breakdown at Santa Anita, and then the big announcement by the Stronach Group about its 2 racetracks in California and what they're going to be doing, getting rid of Lasix, at least on race day, severely limiting other medications, the use of the whip, several bullet points about this. My question is, we've been talking about the racetrack in recent weeks and all the consternation about what's going on with the racetrack, and then the Stronach Group does this. Why?
Well, they addressed the racetrack, and everyone in California seemed confident that the racetrack was no longer the issue. The rain had gone away. It had been, I think, 8 days since any significant precipitation fell. So they needed to address other issues. And the Stronach Group, Frank Stronach and Belinda, are believers in reform of medication regulations. They both support the federal legislation that was reintroduced into Congress again yesterday. But Belinda Stronach yesterday said, we can't wait for the rest of the industry to join us and try to do something. We're going to do this on our own. The rollout yesterday was not something that was just thought up from 8 o'clock in the morning when the 22nd fatality occurred and Princess Lily B broke both her front legs in training, and 1 o'clock when they made the announcement in California. This is something that they had been talking about since this whole thing came up. They had Wednesday, there was a very significant meeting involving Belinda Stronach and her team at the Stronach Group, the TOC board, some board members from TOC, Thoroughbred Owners of California, and other racetracks in California. And she said, look, we are going to do this. And the only question really was the timing of it. And then that was Wednesday. Thursday, we had the horrible breakdown. And they said, okay, let's roll it out today. So these are significant reforms. These are, this is in response not to any animal rights groups, but in response to, I think, public pressure.
Yeah, and people that are outside of California may not understand the pressure that can be placed upon groups by the political system. California is one of those progressive states. They have ballot initiatives that are rather easy to get in front of voters. In fact, you would need 600,000 signatures on a petition to get a ballot referendum, which the public could vote on. That's 600,000 signatures out of 19 million people in that state. And then voters would have the option to say, yeah, we'd like to make horse racing illegal. So that's a real threat. And the people who run the Stronach Group understand that. They're in LA, where there's a lot of influential people who make their opinions known, and they've made their opinions known about this situation. It's not the 12 people holding signs outside of Santa Anita that's causing this. It's the public at large, which looks at it and goes, what the hell is going on at this racetrack? And so I think people that are commenting about this, and then from other states in the industry, don't necessarily understand the specific pressure that's being applied in California. And then, they're pushing back on the Lasix issue and saying it's not about Lasix. We get it. We don't need to scream about this. These measures will put us in line with the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's right. Ballot initiatives are a big thing in California. There were 16 of them last year. As you mentioned, it's not that hard. All it takes is money. You pay people to stand outside of grocery stores and collect signatures. There's a second way to get something on the ballot, and that's through the state legislature. It is a very progressive state, as you said, and the legislature responds to its citizens. And in California, the citizens are getting fed a steady diet of what's wrong with horse racing. And these reforms, though painful, and it will in the short term create a lot of short fields probably. They'll probably have reduced racing dates. I'm not sure. But in the long term, for racing to survive in California, these are necessary.
One of the reactions I've seen a lot is, people screaming about, and I say screaming because they're on the internet using a lot of exclamation marks, screaming about it's the racetrack, dummies, it's the racetrack, it's the rain, it's the weather in Southern California this winter that's caused this spike, and so why are we turning in this direction? Well, was it the racetrack when it was 20 fatalities last year just in racing at Santa Anita, or 25 the year before, or 19 the year before, or 21 the year before? Or how about the 36 fatalities just in racing, not including training? The 36 fatalities in Kentucky last year. Was that the Santa Anita racetrack, those 36 in Kentucky? I don't think so. And then if you look at the National Equine Injury Database, it's 1.6 fatalities last year per 1,000 starts. If you do the math on that, there are 500 fatalities across North America in racing. And then if you add in training, if you look at the statistics, you usually want to double that number. So we're talking 1,000. The other 978 fatalities in racing and training have nothing to do with the Santa Anita racetrack.
That's right. Yeah, another question a lot of people are asking of the Stronach Group is, if you really believe in this, doing this, what's best for the horse, what's best for racing, why are you only doing it in California? You own tracks in Maryland, you own tracks in Florida. Why just California? And the answer is twofold. One, they want to roll it. This is a major change. It's not easy. There are a lot of unanswered questions how they're going to implement. So, I think they want to put this in place in other states, but you've got to start somewhere. And if you do this, say in Maryland, and the horsemen don't like it, they can be in New York, they can be in Pennsylvania in 2 hours on a van. In California, which is an island, you can't just sit there with condition books from 8 different tracks and say, gee, where should I enter this horse to race? Should I enter it to race in a state where there's restrictive medication policies, or should I run somewhere else? So California is the natural starting point. Plus you add in the pressure, the threat of a ballot initiative, and it's natural to start it here. I would think they would want to implement it in other states, but maybe by then the rest of the industry will see, and hopefully this will prove that we can do this, that American racing can do what the rest of the world does.
And I think that people inside the industry who are railing against this already need to think about the bigger picture. Because if you're a Kentucky breeder, does California racing have any value to you? Well, yes, it does. I know a lot of horses are bred in Kentucky and race in California. So you have to look at the ramifications, the potential fallout from what could happen if California, illegalized horse racing. And I don't think it should all be about fear-based, we're worried about the end of the sport. Just thinking constructively about what needs to happen, because again, that bill was reintroduced in Congress, so you have the option of maybe federal oversight of some sort versus, or do you want to take control of the issue from inside the industry and try to self-regulate? That's what the Stronach Group is saying, that's what they're doing, and they're saying, come along for the ride.
Yeah, at the same time though, they do support the federal legislation, which
sure.
It's national oversight. The federal government's not really going to step in if this bill passes. It's the creation of an independent, non-governmental agency under the auspices of the federal government. They will have some oversight of it, but it's bringing in the United States Anti-Doping Agency to create national policy, and that's the one thing most horsemen would agree on, is that we need one set of rules for the whole country. The disagreement comes in on what those rules should be. And I'm here to tell you that everybody wants to talk about Lasix, but some of these other reforms, the injection of joints, the lack of transparency on medication, veterinary records, these are really important and critical issues. And I applaud Belinda Stronach for including those. If you just said no Lasix on race day, I think you could rightly say that's just a PR stunt.
Right.
But when you look at all of these other reforms that are being proposed, and as I said earlier, there's a lot of unanswered questions about how are you going to actually do this? What does this actually mean? What does transparency in vet records mean? A lot of questions still to be answered, but we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, the press release that came out yesterday was bullet points about subjects that there need to be addressed, but it wasn't the actual house rules. I mean, those still need to be sorted out to the specifics. So we're still going to go through that process, and we'll see where it ends up. I mean, I saw a comment from Barry Irwin, longtime owner, on our website that I thought was very relevant, and he was saying, you can't underestimate the public opinion issue here, and he was saying that you maybe you can't correlate directly one medication to breakdowns or something like that, but the overall use of medication, the reliance on medication, and using it sometimes when the horses probably don't even need it, that is the issue here that I think the Stronach Group is addressing.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but to me, it's more than what happens at the racetrack. Veterinary science is a wonderful thing, but I think maybe sometimes we're in a rush to use new drugs that have been developed at different levels. Before yearling sales, there's these bisphosphonates Larry Bramlage has talked about that apparently some farms in Kentucky are using on foals and yearlings to help correct a problem before a sale that might have negative long-term effects on a horse. Bisphosphonates is a huge issue with some people. There's this subject of the surgical procedures that are done on foals to make them look better at a horse sale, whether it's 2-year-old sales where they do something with their shins, or foal and yearling sales when they do corrective surgery for angular limb deformities or conformation issues. Those are all things that have been fairly recent developments in veterinary medicine, and I'm not sure that it's really in the best long-term interest of the breed. It might be good for an individual horse, but what are we doing to the breed long-term? Horses are not as sound as they used to be, based on what everyone tells me at the race. Every trainer I've talked to said they're not as sound as they used to be. Why is that? It's not just what's happening at the racetrack. It's what's happening before they get to the racetrack. That needs to be looked at too.
Absolutely. Well, that 100%. Everyone in the industry needs to look at what they're doing specifically and try to address it to improve the situation so it doesn't get to the point where then we're pointing at the racetrack, and as I pointed out earlier, the statistics don't bear that out. And the trainers, have said we have complete confidence in the racetrack. In fact, the trainer of the filly that broke down yesterday said nothing was wrong with the racetrack. So this people are going to push back a little bit on this because it's drastic. But maybe after a few days and after the discussions about the specifics, we'll have some sort of agreement that drastic steps need to be taken when situations like this occur. What do you think? Do you support what the Stronach Group is doing at Santa Anita and Golden Gate Fields? We have a poll on our website, paulickreport.com, where you can share your thoughts. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.